Welcome to the menu on Native America Calling. I'm Andy Murphy. Dune Lankard is being recognized for his work in preserving more than 1 million acres of land and ocean and developing a sustainable food sovereignty system in his Alaska Native coastal community. Genetic engineering might be an answer to bringing back the all but extinct American chestnut, but not all tribes are on board. And a group of native ranchers and food sovereignty organizations are working to get bison in Great Plains school lunches. We're back after the news.
This is National Native News. I'm Antonia Gonzalez. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has apologized to Indigenous leaders for comments that some First Nations described as racist. The comments were sparked by opposition to Bill 5, which would allow his government to bypass environmental and other regulations in order to fast-track resource development in special economic zones. Dan Karpenchuk has more.
Native leaders have opposed Bill 5, which would, among other things, fast-track mining approvals for critical minerals. Last week, Premier Doug Ford appeared frustrated by their opposition.
You can't just keep coming hat in hand all the time to the government. You've got to be able to take care of yourselves.
Ford had also said his government was making an offer to First Nations on, quote, a silver platter, and that he had treated them like gold. But his language didn't sit well with most Indigenous leaders. Saul Mamakwa is the only First Nations member of the Ontario legislature.
Those comments that were very deeply troubling, but also racist. As First Nations, we are not beggars.
During a 2-hour meeting with the Indigenous leaders, Ford apologized.
And I just want to say I sincerely apologize for my words, not only if it hurt all the chiefs in that room, but all First Nations. And I get passionate because I want prosperity for their communities.
Speaking for the Native leaders, Anishinaabe Nation Grand Council Chief Linda Debasigi.
Our chiefs felt today that the apology was sincere. We are looking at today as a new day going forward.
Debasigi says the meeting was not about Bill 5, but about the Ontario government upholding its treaty responsibility. She did say Native leaders are still opposed to Bill 5. For National Native News, I'm Dan Karpenchuk.
It's the last day of Pride Month and observance to celebrate the LGBTQ community. KJZZ's Gabriel Pietrorazio has more on a Two-Spirit Navajo jurist.
Born in Lupton on the Navajo Nation, Maricopa County's first Indigenous Justice of the Peace, Deborah Ann Begay, has been ruling out of the Moon Valley Courthouse in North Phoenix since 2020. The Navy veteran attended UC Berkeley, then law school at ASU. She's a single parent who identifies as Two-Spirit. And Begay says the best part of her job is officiating marriages, especially for same-sex couples.
Doing the ceremony, you're performing a professional function, but yet you're kind of included in their private lives. And that's even more so when I would get invited to their personal homes. Despite the U.S. Supreme Court legalizing those unions in a 2015 landmark decision, they are still not recognized by the Navajo Nation. The Diné Marriage Act defines matrimony as being only between a man and a woman, though there's been recent pushback to repeal that law. I'm Gabriel Pietrorazio.
In 1847, members of the Choctaw Nation donated $170 to victims of the Irish famine, a gift that keeps on giving. As Show McPolin reports, a new festival is bringing Indigenous and Irish people together again.
It's been 10 years since the Kindred Spirit sculpture was installed in the Irish county of Cork. From the 20-foot-tall stainless steel feathers, which commemorate the Choctaw donation, a new organization emerged. Kindred Spirits Ireland is hosting the World Peace Gathering this summer for those who wish to, quote, celebrate peace, healing, cultural exchange, and Indigenous wisdom. Featured guests include former Navajo Nation Attorney General Ethel Branch and Chief Phil Lane Jr. Sensei Stephen Segal, who claims DNA connections to Indigenous Yakut and Buryat heritage, was also just added to the lineup. For National Native News, I'm Show McPolin in Ireland.
And I'm Antonia Gonzalez.
National Native News is produced by Koahnic Broadcast Corporation with funding by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Support by AARP. AARP creates and connects people to unique tools and programs, helps conserve personal resources, and tackles issues that matter most to individuals, families, and communities. More at aarp.org.
Support for law and justice-related programming provided by Hobbs, Strauss, Dean & Walker, LLP, a national law firm dedicated to promoting and defending tribal rights for over 40 years. More information available at hobbsstrauss.com.
Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.
This is the menu on Native America Calling. I'm Andy Murphy. A foreign blight was responsible for all but wiping out the American chestnut tree. Many tribes utilize them for food, and in recent years, scientists engineered a blight-resistant variety that's regulated and only grown in controlled areas. Now there's a plan to deregulate the genetically modified species, which has both support and opposition from tribes. We'll look at the factors involved in that decision later. Food sovereignty advocates are bringing ranchers, cultural specialists, and school administrators with a vision to introduce bison meat into school lunches in South Dakota and the Great Plains. We'll talk with one of those advocates about the hurdles and solutions. But first, let's meet with Dune Lankard. He's a 2025 James Beard Impact Award recipient. The James Beard Awards are like the Oscars of the culinary world, and this is the first year of the Impact Awards. Lankard's work with the Native Conservancy is all about creating a sustainable food economy in coastal Alaska. If you want to get in on any of these conversations, give us a call at 1-800-996-2848. That's also 1-800-99-NATIVE. Joining us from Anchorage, Alaska is Dune Lankard. He's the founder and president of the Native Conservancy. He's EAC at the Baskin. Welcome to the menu, Dune.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. When did the Native Conservancy start, and what was the goal you wanted to pursue?
Well, in 2003, I decided to form the Native Conservancy because I didn't like the way that conservation deals were being done. And I felt that there should be intrinsic values that we've possessed and have been part of who we are as Native peoples that I felt needed to be valued, as well as rather than just conservation easements, we should have cultural easements and we should have co-management agreements. So we have access to our lands, and people realize that just because land title transfers from one entity to another, that our inherent rights of sovereignty, subsistence, spirituality, and self-determination don't transfer with that paperwork. Those are inherent rights that we should have the ability to uphold and live every day.
All right. And how did things change over the years? Has your vision grown or become more focused?
Yeah, we did. Right after the Exxon Valdez oil spill on March 24th, 1989, over 36 years ago now, I realized that in order to save the habitat, that we had to do as much land back work as we could to basically preserve the habitat that was impacted in the spill zone. And even though we couldn't do any restoration to the ocean itself, the Native corporations at the time had decided to clear cut 1 million acres in the parallel path of the Exxon Valdez. And so I felt that losing that habitat was in defiance of first do no more harm when you're in trouble. And so I decided to start the Native Conservancy and work with various groups and NGOs and government to try and protect as much habitat as we could in the spill zone, which is wild salmon spawning habitat. And then about 2017, only 45,000 sockeye or red salmon returned to the Copper River Delta where I fish commercially. The following year, only 90,000 sockeyes were harvested. And then by 2019, the ocean heated up to 76 degrees for 3 weeks down to 20 feet below the surface, killing literally millions of krill, mussels, wild kelp forests, and salmon and birds. And so I decided to figure out how to ocean farm and focus on food security and food sovereignty. And so we wanted to continue practicing our subsistence way of life. So I told our kelp crew, I said, okay, when we go out ocean farming, let's throw all our lines in the water. Let's do our kelp work and then go up in the mountain and harvest one of our traditional food sources and bring it all home. And then we'll figure out how to process it and package it, freeze it properly with wave energy freezing, and then deliver it to our community in need. And about that time, COVID had broken out, and a lot of our elders weren't getting the traditional foods that they needed to stay strong and healthy and sane. And so we started delivering as many as 15, 16 different traditional foods to folks.
All right. And you have, like you just mentioned, kelp. There's a really big presence of kelp in the Native Conservancy and all the different work that all the little branches under Native Conservancy do. What is kelp used for, and what is its connection to traditions and now economy in that part of coastal Alaska?
Sure. Our motto is land back plus ocean back equals people back. And the idea is we get our land back, we take our ocean back, and we figure out how to get our people back on the water. And in this time of hardship, in these earth-changing times, folks are going to have to learn how to grow things both on the land and in the sea, in our case, in Alaska. So what a lot of people don't realize about kelp and mariculture farming is it's actually a modern day land claims on the ocean, because the permit, when you apply for it, could last as many as 10 years. And with the stroke of a pen, you can renew that permit for an additional 20 years. That's 3 generations that permit on the water would be owned by an individual. So I felt that what we needed to do was address a number of immersion programs to basically help Native people work on workforce development, training their people, figuring out how to do the processing and dehydration, set up markets, figure out the transportation to market and renewable energy applications that can offset the high cost of doing business in the ocean. And so what our Native Conservancy is focused on is a Kelp Now tour to work with villages to let them know, educate them, create awareness, let them know what the kelp industry has for them and could provide for them. And what we found was Native peoples wanted to get into kelp and mariculture for 3 reasons in this order. Number one, to feed their people. And number 2, to help heal and restore the ocean. And then number 3, to build a regenerative economy that they could be proud of and part of. So our Native Conservancy started a Native Sea Trust to get permits in the hands of Indigenous peoples. We started an Indigenous mariculture plan. So I felt like if everyone knew that the Indians were organizing, then everyone would come up with a plan. We're also forming a Native Kelp Cooperative so we can offset the high cost of doing business in the ocean and get our permits on the water. And then we want to build a Native Kelp Alliance, which would be basically a 501c4, which will help us change policy and law and regulation and write laws ourselves for the mariculture industry. And then the final is to build a kelp highway network to work with people around the world so we can duplicate the successes rather than the many mistakes that are being made in the industry.
All right. And what is the kelp industry like in Alaska right now?
Right now, the markets are finally starting to appear. It took about 3 to 4 years of doing test sites and showing that we could scale and that we could grow good kelp. And a couple of the things like we've been doing is trying to help community members get diver certification so they can source their own seed, help them figure out how to build their arrays for their kelp farms, how to deploy their kelp, how to monitor it, how to harvest it and get it to market. So now that markets are interested, what they found is that kelp is the fastest growing organism on the planet. It can grow 18 to 24 inches a week, depending on its species. They found that if you add kelp to animal feed and feed it to cows and pigs, it reduces their emissions by 60 to 80%. And so when you add it to fertilizer, things grow greener, faster, stronger, and require less water. So we feel that this is an opportunity that we'll be able to take our kelp resources from the homelands and bring them to the heartlands to help people grow things on their agriculture farms. So I feel like right now the markets are finally starting to show up. We had our first 35,000 pound kelp farmer in Prince William Sound. Kodiak has had a couple of years of good growing capabilities. Same with Southeast Alaska. They had some good bull kelp that they were able to grow in Southeast this year. So I feel we're at this point right now where we can start scaling up this industry. And what it'll do is it'll provide good paying jobs to be citizen scientists and learn how to be indigenous guardians on the water again, because our goal is to figure out how to reignite that relationship with the ocean, whether it's fishing for our commercial and subsistence resources, and certainly ocean farming and learning how to run boats and work on them.
All right. All right, land back, ocean back, people back. That was Dune Lankard. He is one of the first to get a James Beard Impact Award at this year's James Beard Awards ceremony. Since it was established 70 years ago, the Indian Health Service is seen as both a fulfillment of the U.S. government's official responsibility and a chronically underfunded means to care for the country's native people. We'll take stock of IHS as it launches into its 8th decade and assess its future amid the current remaking of the federal government. That's all on the next Native America Calling.
Support for this program is provided by AARP. AARP creates and connects people to unique tools and programs, helps conserve personal resources, and tackles the issues that matter most to individuals, families, and communities. What AARP does might surprise people. For more information and resources, including member benefits, AARP advocacy, and more, go to aarp.org.
This is the menu on Native America Calling, our regular feature on Indigenous food sovereignty. I'm Andy Murphy. Tribes on the East Coast are among those weighing in on a plan to deregulate a genetically modified variety of chestnut tree. Native species were all but wiped out by blight. Do you think a genetically modified variety would revitalize the American chestnut tree? Give us a call at 1-800-996-2848. That's 1-800-99-NATIVE. Let's bring in our next guest here. We have Brenda Jo McManus. She's in North Central West Virginia. She's the Public Relations Officer and Web Manager for the Indigenous Environmental Network and the campaign organizer for Stop GE Trees. She's of Seneca descent. Welcome to the menu, Brenda Jo.
Well, thank you very much. I'd like to welcome all your listeners and your staff, and I pray you all are well.
Thank you for that. All right. Well, I want to go into chestnut trees. Were very plentiful in the U.S. Now, a person could not go into a forest and find one. For those who don't know, tell us about what happened to the chestnut tree.
Yeah, approximately 1846, the Bronx Zoo had imported a Japanese variety of castanea, which is the Latin name for chestnut. And it had the blight that we are now trying to breed out of, and some want to genetically engineer the tree so that it will survive. By the time the horticulturist noticed this, it was already too late because the American chestnut did not have the immunity to this blight as did both the Chinese and. So in a very short period, the trees became very ill, and to fight the blight, the Forest Service and other researchers decided to cut down all of the chestnut trees that they could find in the path of this blight, which was a huge mistake because currently there's an approximate 4 million chestnut trees, mature chestnut trees across the country that did not succumb or do not succumb to this blight.
Could you talk about some of the uses the tribes had for chestnut trees and the chestnut?
Yeah, the chestnut was used widely everywhere. I mean, it was a commercial commodity. It was used in flour. It was ground up just like wheat or even acorns and used to make breads. And it was also used to build our log cabins in the East. It was used for furniture and for any number of things. Barns was a big deal because it was easy to work with. It resisted rot like no other tree, and it's beautiful. And so, there were hundreds of uses, I would say.
Yeah.
So I can't name them all, but it was a keystone feature. It was the keystone part of our forest on the East Coast, actually up along the north part of our country and out on the Pacific Northwest as well. The East Coast trees, though, were the ones that succumb to the blight, which makes them functionally extinct.
All right. And you mentioned there are existing varieties of chestnut trees right now, the Chinese and the Japanese variety. They're being crossbred with surviving American chestnuts. Is this a viable way to bring back chestnut trees, to bring them back into the forests?
It's absolutely a way to do it, but because we always want to do things quick and overnight, it's going to take more time. And even the process that the genetically engineered camp, it's still going to take time with them. So, but the Chestnut Cooperators Foundation is one that is stuck to the back cross, unlike the American Chestnut Foundation. So we've had a lot of success. I'm actually growing a Japanese-American hybrid here. I have about 4 surviving trees. Unfortunately, the deer, who are plentiful here, also like the chestnut seedlings. But mine are doing very well. They're 10 foot tall. I have no cankers. And so far, and we have the blight here in this area. There's 4 trees up on the hill that are doing that. They grow up to a certain size. They may have catkins one year and produce chestnuts, but very soon afterward, they die down to the root. And this process continues over and over and over again. It's done it for probably almost more than a century. Mm. So the trees that I have with the Japanese genes in them are doing very well.
Okay. All right. Tell me about the process of genetically modifying these trees. I mean, it seems like this work started years ago. There are a couple of strains that I've read about, Darling 58, 54. Can you tell me about that brief history there of this tree being genetically modified, where we have one or two strands that folks are thinking about deregulating?
Well, first of all, when the permit to deregulate or to plant was no restrictions, the Darling 58 was the tree that they cited in their application as the tree that shows the most promise. Unfortunately, it was the D54 that was used as the example. And there's lots of stories and back and forth. And as of now, the American Chestnut Foundation, the New York chapter, has kind of severed ties with the SUNY project for getting this tree deregulated. And one of their main reasons for doing this, not just to restore the tree to the forest, but to commercialize this tree. They also, the College of Environmental Science, SUNY ESF, began working with an organization, a company that has I guess you'd call it a memorandum of understanding, that when this permit is approved, if and when, that they will have the rights to sell millions of transgenic seedlings, and they're worth millions of dollars. So there's always seems to be a commercial, capitalist reason for this. And it's been that way for a very long time. And the fear and the threat of permitting this food tree in the forest or in tree plantations is immense. It's there's all kinds of reasons, and I'll let you ask the next question because I know we don't have time to talk about all this. But the Chinese and the Japanese trees have infiltrated the forest. They are there too. The American chestnut, the ones that have survived, they're there too. And the American Chestnut Foundation's plan is to breed the genetic Darling 54, who, by the way, has only been done in controlled circumstances and only for a very few years. Mm-hmm. So we have no idea what putting this blight resistant gene into the forest will have, because I'll probably mess it up because I'm not a scientist, but the blight in the forest is not necessarily a bad thing. This organism also is used by a multitude of plants in forests.
Okay.
So we don't know, and that's all we're asking. We don't know. It's too soon. And we do oppose the commercialization of this and any tree, because these tree forests, these tree plantations are void of all life except for the one tree that they're growing. They do this with a loblolly pine. They do it with other trees for commercial use, and there's no life. They rip up the earth. They take all the life off the surface. They spray the ground with herbicides and pesticides, and then they plant their trees. So that also threatens the water table. It threatens the people around these areas where the forests are being grown, these tree plantations. So this is not just about this one genetically engineered tree. I began this work when we were fighting a eucalyptus tree that was going to be planted in the southern part of our country that had been genetically engineered to resist cold temperatures, grow faster, and have more terpene in the tree that helps them to burn hotter so that they can burn these trees, either co-firing with coal or by themselves, to produce energy.
Okay.
So that's a lot to unpack.
Yeah,
you.
yeah, definitely. And the chestnut tree. This would be the first tree that might be deregulated in this way. The first GMO tree.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And you mentioned, there are all kinds of different threats. You mentioned, a couple of them. There's just not enough that we know about how it's going to affect the land. It sounds like there are a lot of commercial interests in selling these trees and growing these trees. But what are, some of the cultural maybe concerns that folks have with growing a tree like this that's been modified unnaturally?
Well, we know, and we know because of who we are and our teachings, but scientists and researchers now are telling us how connected everything is in the forest. And everything, our relatives, have a spirit and are alive. But when you change that tree's DNA, the very building blocks of its life, it becomes a stranger. We don't know it. We don't know how to have a relationship with this tree. We don't know what's going to happen. And quite frankly, humans, and a lot of people will disagree with me, we don't have the knowledge to do this. We don't have the knowledge to put a foreign organism into a healthy forest and know how those changes are going to affect everything from mycelium to the blooms, to the bees, to the products, to the foods that are going to be produced. So, humans, they got a lot of hubris, and unfortunately, changing, adding, moving, deleting genes, DNA from any organism changes its being. It's like reading a book where someone's taken out a few sentences or moved them to the back of the book or taken out a paragraph. It doesn't make any sense anymore. So, every indigenous person, community in their spiritual ways has different reasons for either accepting it or opposing it. And we're just one organization who works with other organizations and indigenous peoples who have a right to their own ways of life. So we're just one, but we're sounding the alarm, because once that tree gets into the forest and these unholy, if you will, relationships are formed and other damage is done, other changes that we didn't predict, it's going to be too late, because you can't bring them back. We already know this because of the blight, right? Mm-hmm. Anybody living in the southern part of the country, all I have to do is mention kudzu, which was another really great idea at one time that is now taken over a lot of acreage. And there's other reasons for us to reject genetically modifying anything right now because of the challenges that we're going through with climate change. Species are moving to adapt. Things are dying and ending up other places because there is a reason for it. They can't survive where they're at. So Mother Nature and natural law will take over. But what will be the result? Will we be happy or will we not?
Okay. Do you think, or do you have any concerns about deregulation of this tree, maybe opening a door for deregulating other types of species that are genetically engineered?
Oh, yes. There is many efforts now underway to genetically modify the poplar tree, to genetically engineer, well, they've already genetically engineered some of the citrus groves, not the trees themselves, but another element in their world of insect, and they genetically engineered an apple tree. But none of these were approved to be put into a forest or someone's farm or land with no oversight, with no way to monitor and hopefully, a way to remove the offending trees if things go wrong. So, there's, like I said, there's a lot to unpack. But also, there's 4 species of Castanea in the United States. We've got the American chestnut, and then there's 3 species of chinkapin. Chinkapin is another Castanea that also grows profusely in the southern United States. And their survival is also at risk from different things. And may I add that the chestnut blight is just one of 4 diseases that threaten the American chestnut. And the Darling 54 or 58, whatever it is, does not address those other 3 diseases, which can kill a tree pretty quickly, by the way.
All right, that is Brenda Jo McManus. She is a campaign organizer for Stop GE Trees. We will, I think, maybe cover this issue more in the future. It's very interesting. But you can join our conversation here about Indigenous food by calling 1-800-996-2848. That's 1-800-99-NATIVE.
Trickster Cultural Center hosts the 11th Annual National Gathering of American Indian Veterans to honor veterans and military personnel of all cultures, eras, and branches in a Native way. Trickster Cultural Center's National Gathering of American Indian Veterans is open to the public at no charge Friday, July 18th and Saturday, July 19th in Schaumburg, Illinois. More at tricksterculturalcenter.org/national-gathering-2025. Trickster Cultural Center supports this show.
You're listening to The Menu on Native America Calling. I'm Andy Murphy. Native buffalo ranchers and food sovereignty advocates are building a new pathway that connects this culturally important protein with Native children, getting bison meat in school lunches. Join us by calling 1-800-996-2848. That's also 1-800-99-NATIVE. Would you like to see bison meat in your kids' schools? That's 1-800-99-NATIVE. Joining us from Wichita Falls in Texas is Dawn Sherman. She is the executive director for the Tonka Fund, and she's Lakota, Shawnee, and Delaware. Welcome to The Menu, Dawn.
Thank you, and welcome to the listeners today. I appreciate it.
So the Tonka Fund just held a conference with a number of people and brought folks together to talk about bison and school lunches. Tell us who some of the folks were and what did you guys talk about?
Yeah, Tonka Fund obviously is a nonprofit, which we do return buffalo to the lands, lives, and economies of Indigenous people. And we have an alignment with many of these sponsors that had come in to do the Regional Buffalo School Conference. So we were one of the co-sponsors, and it was to build a bridge between bringing ranchers together, schools, and Indigenous leaders to strengthen that presence of buffalo into the school meals and into different Indigenous food systems. All, through food sovereignty. We held that in Rapid City, and it launched. It was great. We had a 3-day event, and it launched with our cultural teachings with a hands-on harvest. We also had some educational sessions, and we around the advanced food sovereignty, as well as the economic development and the health of the benefit for buffalo within our community. So all of us came together and developed that gap. And built a bridge.
All right. Do you guys think you made any progress in, I guess, next steps or strategies for getting bison in schools?
Yes, for sure. We've had a lot of comments afterwards, how great it was. Part of this is the economies, right, in the mission to help open those doors of getting that buffalo in. As we know, buffalo is a keystone species to the land, so you have all those layers of bringing back the land, the development around, regenerative ag and the practices that we've around traditional ecological knowledge that we have, and our ranchers are doing that. And then the second thing is getting these into the school is buffalo was a cornerstone and is a cornerstone of our food and food sovereignty, especially in the buffalo culture. They're nutrient dense, they're very healthy. So the feedback we got was great, and it was really to teach them how to cook it, see all those traditional parts of it and how we utilize the whole animal. And then the other part also was to bring that understanding that or the mystery around, right, the USDA and state certified and how, what they can bring into the schools and buy to put into the middle of the plate for the schools.
Okay. Are there schools that already implement bison meat into their menus? And what is the importance of having bison in school lunches, if you can build more on that part too?
Yes, there was several of the schools that were already there from the Oglala Nation, from Rosebud and Cheyenne River, and many of those schools already have buffalo that they are serving, and they're teaching the traditional ways of that buffalo and the nutrition around it. So there were several of those schools that were there that were already had buffalo, but wanted to learn more and to bring more in, and also to connect with the local ranchers so they can bring more local buffalo in to those schools. And then teaching that nutrition, it's a nutrient-dense product. When they're being, out there on the grass, they they're high in omega-3s, which is higher than sockeye salmon. It's, it's a nutrient-dense with the protein strand that it has. So it's also teaching that, because it what did sustain us through winters with the hunters and gatherers. So wasna in the Lakota was the dried buffalo with the choke cherries or buffalo berries into it that had the organ fat in there, and it would sustain them through those times as well as out there. So teaching some of that is also that it's very good for those kids, and they just love it. They jump right in at the harvest and everything. Those kids are not scared. They just love it. It's amazing to watch them.
All right. And what are some of those policy barriers that schools and everybody here faces in getting bison meat into more schools?
Yes, part of that obviously is a lot of the schools talk about having the USDA meat, or it has to be USDA certified. And part of the work that was done within DC on that side was to teach the schools, as well as connecting those ranchers, that the USDA does have a reimbursable program for the schools and their school lunches. But USDA now does not require federal inspection of buffalo meat into those indigenous schools, because the federal and the state inspection are the same requirements. So we wanted to let them know that that opportunity was there, and it's up to each state and each tribe on how to decide what their inspection requirements are. So they have that's part of the food sovereignty and food security, is to show them that they do have control of what goes onto those plates in their schools, and how healthy that once they want that middle of that plate and the meat that they're providing. So we wanted to kind of break down that barrier, because that was work that was done. That has been great work with people like Heather Dawn Thompson from World Wildlife. On that side was a co-sponsor also at World Wildlife, to break down that kind of mystery between USDA and state certified, and we do have more control of what we can feed our children.
Okay. And what schools are, I guess, very interested, or what schools are you guys maybe thinking of targeting for implementation of bison meat? And how receptive are school districts and educators to this initiative?
This local one was more in, around the Great Plains, and then we hope to expand this Buffalo to School conference into other regions and open that up too. We have quite a bit of interest within the city. There's a few more layers there that you work through, and you work through with the state, but they're very interested in. We had representatives there for the farm to school lunch programs. Teaching about how we can get buffalo in there also, and has that list of ranchers now so they can actually have that direct connection. So we had quite a bit of interest within that area, but we also had people coming from other regions. We had people from California and from the South and from Wyoming, because it's such an important thing, and it's the first time it's ever been done, is having this Buffalo to School conference and kind of breaking that mystery down and showing them that there is availability there.
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned availability. Would there be enough buffalo to supply, say, a large public school or just a large number of students?
Yeah, absolutely there is, especially in the local with touching a lot of these local ranchers that are already going into these programs, and then they have more connections. So that's there is a shortage in buffalo in the industry, but for these local micro places within Indigenous, there is availability.
Okay. And how do you suppose this would affect the economics? How would it benefit tribes and Native communities?
It's a full circle with the buffalo. So it not only touches, say, the food and being able to get the nutrition, but our key elements around the cultural and its grounding. So it has kind of like this arm effect as you go out with buffalo, because it's just our identity in those communities. The buffalo in the schools is to help bridge that. Our cultural grounding, the respect for the harvest, and that's always taught when we're bringing that in. On that side with teaching the participants, the spiritual importance and the cultural importance and the intention when you are harvesting an animal that we have. Our economic empowerment, through the USDA, the state certified, the regional co-ops, or even the local farmers market is touching the communities within the tribes as well as outside of the tribal, because they are all participating within their tribes. So it just enhances that. The system that they already have is just bringing more opportunity and availability to their communities. And then the collaborative impact is, having many partners like the World Wildlife and Nature Conservancy and Intertribal Buffalo and Cheyenne River and NDN and many of those sponsors as part of it, that we're all here to support bringing more buffalo into those programs and into those tribes.
Okay. Where do you see this initiative, the Bison to Schools initiative, within this larger movement of bringing buffalo back to Native America?
Yes. We always say in order to conserve, you have to eat. There's always, that part of it. So we're going to get more buffalo on the land, which brings, more of that natural prairie around. More Indigenous people are having our Native peoples with what Tonka Fund does, is we're providing opportunity to the lands, lives, and economies by supporting them to raise buffalo, whether it's through grant funding. So we see that enhancing as we go forward with this program, and then being able to bring it around to other regions, because every region's a little bit different. As we said, it's state to state, so we definitely want to support all the ranchers and all those schools within it. So we see this, movement going further out with all our collaborative partners and adding more ranchers into this, as well as more schools. I see more value added coming out of this at some point, as far as, we have the meat, but, you're talking maybe some hot dogs or grillers, as I think the kids call them, glizzies now, within the school programs. So, one of the things is taking a traditional product and turning it into more something that the kids recognize and like. So I could definitely see more of that coming into, because that's what, the kids like, the hamburgers and the hot dogs and that type of stuff. So I could see more value added in adding more traditional foods into those as this grows.
Okay. All right. I like that, buffalo glizzies.
Yep, exactly. That's what I say. That my grandson says it all the time. They're not hot dogs, Grandma. They're glizzies.
What do you think? I guess the native buffalo industry would need to bring in more of those, or to produce more of those value-added products?
Yes, part of that is having more availability to places to harvest and have value-added products and be able to do that as far as those plants go. They are, small, so we're, looking at creating more access to being able to bring that type of more food in more locally and regionally without having to ship it, say 500 miles away. It's able to being done right there on the tribes, and teaching some technical assistance around that, and providing some, that cultural harvest like most Indigenous people like to do. Instead of putting them into a plant, they do like to do this, some like the cultural grounding and having it done in the field, which is more humane and more culturally significant for them. So we're really just trying to support that, and then making sure we're bringing more of those opportunities in, whether it's through ITBC supporting them, or Tonka Fund supporting, or Nature Conservancy, World Wildlife, the different programs in there, and lifting them up within the community with what we do, because we're just a steward for them, for the schools and the ranchers and the tribes. We're here to support them because they're the ones doing the hard work.
Okay. And with all of the federal budget cuts and program cuts being handed down by Trump and the Trump administration, is there maybe anything, is there a process or something within this initiative that would be affected by current budget cuts, or maybe in future budget cuts?
Yeah, we have had, many of us and the partners alike have already had the impacts, and just how we are as Indigenous people, we're resilient, just like the buffalo. So it's doing more of this collaborative work together and have more impact, because no matter who's sitting in the administration, we're still here to continue to do the work of supporting our communities together. So we just, continue to work forward, because we've always said, right, no matter who's sitting in that seat over there, our ancestors have faced worse, and, if more collaborative work together to support, because we've had losses, but we're still doing the same things together. So on that side, we've all felt those impacts, and then we do, many of them do have a voice there, so they have a voice for the ones like us that cannot have the voice when they're going and speaking to the administration. So I feel that we have great groups around within the buffalo, and it takes a herd and it through there. And buffalo didn't come back just by one person; it was entrepreneurs, and I feel that's how our community is we're all entrepreneurs here, and we just pivot as it goes forward, and we continue to have the fight and have the voice for the buffalo who are the voiceless here, and give them a voice and make sure that they're protected, so we can keep doing this and giving back to our community. So it has been hard, but at the same time, what I've seen here is resilience with all these partners and Indigenous groups and tribes, as everybody's really working together.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dawn. Where could folks go to learn more about the Tonka Fund and the Bison to School initiatives?
Yes, on our website, obviously, you can read more about it, and you can go to, tonkafund.org and read all about that initiative. And then all our partners that were part of the co-sponsors, as I had mentioned before, also have some teachings within there that we will have around this buffalo. And I would just continue to keep an eye on it, because we will have more of these schools, and we want the public to come. We want people to learn about the buffalo. So definitely stay in touch with us and our other co-sponsors, because there'll be more coming in the future for sure.
All right, that's all the time we have for our conversations today. I'd like to say thank you to our guests, Dune Lankard, Brenda Jo McManna, and Dawn Sherman. Join us tomorrow for a discussion about the legacy and future of the Indian Health Service. Tomorrow marks 70 years since its founding. I'm Andy Murphy.
Guys, don't wait until you have symptoms. Regular checkups may catch health issues early, and conditions like diabetes, heart disease, liver disease, and prostate cancer are more treatable when caught early. Ask your Indian healthcare provider what health checks are recommended for your age and lifestyle. A message from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services.
Program support by the Colorado Plateau Foundation, a native-led foundation supporting native-led initiatives protecting lands, waters, and cultures of the plateau for generations to come. The Colorado Plateau Foundation helps to build networks, community, and organizational capacity. The Colorado Plateau Foundation is accepting grant proposals through September 5th. Eligibility information is available at coloradoplateaufoundation.org.
Native America Calling is produced in the Annenberg National Native Voice Studios in Albuquerque, New Mexico by Quantic Broadcast Corporation, a Native nonprofit media organization. Funding is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting with support from the Public Radio Satellite Service. Music is by Brent Michael Davids. Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.